Okay, so again, good morning. Always good morning because we are, no, actually today is Sunday, no? Capacity planning, no? The production system design planning consider input, requirements, conversion process, and output. So after considering the forecast and long-term planning, organizations should undertake capacity planning, right? Maybe later on, our presenter give us more definitions on a capacity. So in some sense, when we say capacity, it is defined as the ability to achieve, store, or produce. So for an organization, capacity would be the ability of a given system to produce output within the specific time period. So in operations, management capacity is referred to as an amount of the input resources available to produce relative output over period of time. So in general, term capacity is referred to as a maximum production capacity which can be attained within a normal working schedule. So then, because capacity planning is essential to be determining optimum utilization of resources and plays an important role decision-making process, for example, extension of existing operations, modification to the product lines, starting new products and others. There are some institutions who are using strategic capacity planning, no? So a technique used to identify and measure overall capacity of production is referred to as a strategic capacity planning. SCP, or the strategic capacity planning, is utilized for capital intensive resource like plant, machinery, and labor. This is CP is essential as it helps the organization in meeting the future requirements of the organizations, and planning ensures that operating costs are maintained at a minimum possible level without affecting the quality. It ensures the organizations remain competitive and can achieve the long-term growth plan. So for us to give more details about the topic or about the capacity planning, yes, Madam Bayani, go ahead.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. So my topic is about the capacity planning. So when we say capacity planning, it means that it determines if existing hardware is meeting the company's needs, determine the company's future needs. It also identifies the opportunities to consolidate, determine whether the existing infrastructure can support anticipated growth, and implement the capacity planning. So capacity planning is to be carried out keeping in mind future growth and expansion plans, market trends, sales forecasting, etc. The objective of capacity planning is to match the level of operations to the level of demand. Capacity planning is the process of establishing the output rate that may be needed at a facility, and the fluctuation of demand creates problems regarding the procurement of resources to meet the customer demand. So when we say capacity, it is the maximum output rate of a production or service facility. So in capacity, it includes equipment, Yan. So when I say capacity, it includes the equipment, the space, and the employer's skills. So the basic questions in capacity planning, so in forecasting, we need to know first how much is needed, what kind of capacity is needed, and when is it needed. So why are we conducting this capacity planning? So these are the reasons. So we are conducting this because, of course, changes in demand. So second is because of the opportunity, the perceived threats. So the changes in environment, just like what we are encountering today, the pandemic, and then the changes in technology. So the importance of capacity decisions. So the importance of capacity decisions, first is the impacts ability to meet future demands. Second is it affects the operating cost. Third is major determinant of initial cost. It involves the long-term commitment. It affects the competitiveness, and it affects the case of management. So how are we going to measure the capacity? So there are different types of measuring of capacity depending on what type of business are you into. So for example, the types of business is the car manufacturer. So we are going to get or measure the capacity by the means of labor hours. So how we can get the output, of course, how many cars per shift is being done. So for example, in the hospital, so the input measures is how many are the available beds in the hospital, and then the outputs, how many patients per month are being accommodated. Then in the pizza parlor, so same with the car manufacturer, excuse me, the labor hours, and then the output is how many pizzas uh, per day. And then in the retail store, so the input measures is the floor space in square feet, and then the revenue per foot is the output. So the capacity terminology. So design capacity, it means that it is the maximum capacity or the maximum theoretical output of a system. So it is normally expressed as a rate and under ideal conditions. Effective capacity, it is the best operating level. It is the capacity a firm expects to achieve given current operating constraints. So it often lower the design capacity, and it is also under ideal condition. Then the actual output, it is the capacity being used, and it is the rate of output actually achieved. So it cannot exceed effective capacity. So how are we going to calculate the capacity utilization? So it measures how much of the available capacity is actually being used. So in utilization, it is the actual output rate over the capacity times the 100%. So measures effectiveness, it uses either effective or design capacity in denominator. So here is the example of the computation. So for example, the design capacity is 50 trucks per day. And then the effective capacity is 40 trucks per day. And then the actual output is 36 units per day. So in efficiency, we're going to get the actual output, which is the 36 units per day. So over or divide the effective capacity, which is 40 trucks per day. So 36 divide 40 units times the 100% is equals to 90%. So the efficiency rate of this is 90%. And then the utilization, actual output, which is the 36 units, over or divide the design capacity, which is 50 units per day. So 36 over 50 times the 100% is 72%. So 72% is the utilization rate. Determinants of effective capacity. So first is the facilities. Facility, it includes the size, the location, the layout, heating, lighting, and ventilations. So the products and service factors, yung similarity of products, the process factors, productivity, quality. Human factors, it includes the training, the skills, the experiences, motivations, absenteeism, and turnover. And then in the policy factors, it includes the overtime system, the number of shifts. Operational factors, it is the scheduling problems, purchasing requirements, inventory shortages. The supply chain factors, it is the warehousing, the transportation, the means of distribution. And then the external factors, it is the product standards, government agencies, and the pollution standards. Strategy formulation. Capacity strategy for long-term demand. The demand pattern, the growth rate and variability. Facilities, it is the cost of building and the operating. Technological changes, it is the rate and direction of technology changes. Behavior of competitors, and the availability of capital and other inputs. So forecasting capacity requirements. It is the long term versus the capacity needs. So long term relates to the overall level of capacity such as the facility size, trends, and cycles. And in the short term, it relates to the variations from seasonal, random, and irregular fluctuations in demand. Planning service capacity. So the planning service capacity, it needs to be near to the customer. So the capacity and location are closely tied. The inability to store services. So the capacity must be matched with timing of demand. And the degree of volatility of demand, so it is the peak of demand periods. The process of capacity planning. Capacity requirements can be evaluated from two perspectives capacity strategies. First is the long-term capacity strategies. It is the requirements. The requirements are more difficult to determine because the future demand and the technology are uncertain. So the forecasting for 5 to 10 years into the future is more risky and difficult. So what are the parameters to affect the long-term capacity? So first is the multiple products, producing more products using the same facilities to increase the profit. So second is the phasing in capacity. So it is the industries where technology developments are very fast. And then the phasing out capacity, so it is the outdated manufacturing facilities. Then in the short-term capacity strategies, the managers often use forecasts of product demand to estimate the short-term workload the facility must handle. So the managers are looking ahead up to 12 months to anticipate output requirements for different products and services. The managers then compare requirements, existing capacity, then take decisions as to when the capacity adjustments are needed. So the short-term capacity are the inventories, backlog, employment level, hiring or firing. So in the inventories, the stock of finished goods during slack periods to meet the demand during peak period. So the backlog, it is the willing customers that are requesting to wait to their orders and to fulfill their needs during the peak demand period. And then the employment level, so it is the hiring or firing additional employees during peak demand and then lay off employees as the demand decreases. So fourth is the employee training. So we must need to develop the multi-skilled employees through training so that they can be rotated in different jobs. Fifth is the subcontracting, where during peak periods, you must hire the capacity of other firms temporarily to make the component parts or products. And then the 6 is process design. So you must change job contents by redesigning the job. So that's all, sir and classmates. Thank you po.
Okay, so to give you some additional inputs about the topic, about the okay. So again, the facility planning, as I mentioned, no? Sorry, the capacity planning pa tayo. As I mentioned earlier, no? There are some capacity planning classifications, no? We have what we call the long term, the medium term, the short term, and the short term. No. So when it comes to long-term capacity planning, no, based on the timeline in classified, as I mentioned, with the these categories, no. For the long-term capacity, long range capacity of an organization is dependent on various other capacities, na, like design capacity, production, sustainable, and effective capacity. So design capacity is the maximum output possible as indicated by equipment manufacturer under ideal working conditions. On the other hand, no, production capacity is the maximum output possible from equipment under normal working condition or day. The sustainable capacity is the maximum production level, no, achievable in realistic work condition in considering normal machine breakdown or maintenance and others. No? The effective capacity is the optimum production level under predefined job and work schedules, normal machine breakdown, maintenance, and others. That is for the long-term capacity. How about the medium-term capacity? The strategic capacity planning undertaken by organizations for 2 to 3 years of time frame is referred to as a medium-term capacity planning. On the other hand, no, the short-term capacity, the strategic planning undertaken by organization for a daily or weekly or quarterly time frame is referred to as a short-term capacity planning. So, what will be the goal, no, of capacity planning? The ultimate goal actually of the capacity planning is to meet the current and future level of requirement at a minimal wastage. No? There are 3 types, of course, of capacity planning based on a goal are lead capacity planning, lag strategy planning, and match strategy planning. So, factors affecting the capacity planning. So, effective capacity planning is dependent upon factors like production facility, what covered the production facility, layout, design, and location. Another thing is product line or matrix, no? Production technology, human capital like job design or in compensation, operational structure like scheduling, quality assurance, and external structure like policy and safety regulations. Again, a while ago, no, we discussed already the forecasting versus the capacity planning. Maybe where some we need to consider when we say forecasting, of course, there would be a scenario where capacity planning done on a basis of forecasting. It may not exactly match actually. So for example, there should be a scenario where demand is more than production capacity. In this situation, a company needs to fulfill its requirement by buying from outside. If demand is equal to production capacity, company is in position to use its production capacity to the fullest. No? If the demand is less than the production capacity, company can choose to reduce the production or share it output with other manufacturers. Okay, so I think that's it for the capacity planning.